Good morning everyone, Justin here, and today we are going to draw the front view of a skull. In a separate video, I actually drew the skull from a profile or side view. So let's start by drawing this based on a sphere. So let's draw a circle, roughly, and draw a center line. I'll draw these a little darker so we can see it better. And draw the midpoint horizontal line here. So this becomes the brow of the skull. So if we go about 2/3 of the way up, that would be the hairline. So this distance we're going to repeat it twice. 1, 2, and 3. This will be the bottom of the chin. So this would be the nose. 1/3 of the way down from this distance here would be the mouth. So this is where the center of the teeth are going to be. And this, again, this is the brow line. So this is going to be the top of the orbit, or where the eyes would fall. So let's just roughly draw kind of like a sort of like a rectangle. And then here then would be the nose, but the bones of the nose don't actually go all the way down to the tip of the nose. It's only at the top, at the bridge here. So we'll draw this kind of triangular shape here roughly for now. And then for the teeth will go about up between the midpoints of these, the eyes. So let's go down like this, and right here would be the outer edges of the teeth. So now we're going to draw a couple curved lines above, and the bottom line not quite as high, below that initial line here. These will mark the bottoms of the teeth and the top of the upper teeth right here. Alright, so we can now start putting in more details. So we'll darken this a little bit, and we're going to go inside of the initial curve just a little bit here. Okay, go down. So then this bone here actually kind of comes out, called the zygomatic bone, and then go down a little bit here, and just below the bottom of the nose here is where the cheekbone ends, to go inside to go to where the teeth would be. Okay, so we'll do the same on the other side. Kind of goes out this way. Just like that. And again, actually I'm going to make this little bump out a little bit higher. Same with here. So this bone here actually kind of comes in for the temporal area. So there's a little bit of a dip right here on the side of the head. Same with here, which forms the outer part of the orbit, or where the eyes would be. So the eyeballs would be right here. Okay, so now that we have that, we can work on the teeth first. So let's just start drawing some teeth here. So again, as I said, this line will be the middle of the mouth, or the teeth. So we'll draw some teeth here, front of the teeth, and then each tooth then will start to recede a little bit and fall behind the tooth that was in front. And we'll just draw like 6 teeth here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, the bottom, let's draw some bottom teeth, and these will fall behind the upper teeth, so you're not going to see the tops as much. So let's go ahead and do that. And you can just vary these. Every skull, every person is a little bit different. And don't worry about the proportions, trying to make it exact. Whatever skull you make will fit somebody's head somewhere out there. I'm gonna lower this chin a little bit here, down here. Doesn't really matter. So anyway, what's holding the upper teeth is this bone here. What's holding the lower teeth is the mandible. So now we'll draw the mandible, and the joint for the mandible is actually back here, kind of where your ears are. So let's go ahead and draw that. So here's the inside of the mandible, just a curved line. Same with here, curved line this way. And now we can draw the outer line for the mandible going down this way. And the corner of the jaw is here, so we'll change the angle of the line to meet up with the chin. I think I drew this opening a little bit too big, so I'm just gonna make it a little bit smaller and use this outer line then as the shadow, because this part, the rim of the orbit, is going to be in light, so this part here will be a little bit in shadow, just so we can make it a little bit more three-dimensional. So I'm going to start shading it a little bit here, and I'm just going to use some crosshatch initially, get all of this a little bit darker. Just going to erase that initial line here, and while we're at it, I'll just go ahead and erase some of our initial lines. So first thing we'll go ahead and do is put in the darks, shadows. So this is going to be fairly dark inside. So I'll just go ahead and do an initial single tone to cover this whole area. Same with here. And just kind of blend it a little bit with my finger. And now I'm going to make it a little bit darker. More on this side, more towards the middle areas, this side of the opening. Make this part a little bit darker. And now I'm going to use a little bit more pressure and use different directions as well. And I want to make this edge fairly sharp, just to really delineate the edge of the bone before the opening. And as I go further out, more light's gonna enter, so I'm gonna lighten up on the pressure. And again, I'm just using squiggly lines, going just different directions and going back and forth, just to make the gradient a little bit more even, all the way out here to the side. And I'll do the same here. I'm gonna again make it darker towards this side of the eye opening and lighter out here. Okay, so I'll just start here on the right side of this, and again I'm gonna make this edge fairly sharp as far as contrast between the dark and the light, like so. Again, this is just a sketch. I'm just going in all sorts of different directions to get the shading that I want. And again, I want this edge to be a little bit sharp. Okay, so now let's go to this nose section here. Now this part goes fairly deep into the skull, so I'm gonna make this even darker. And in the middle here, there's actually a part that kind of sticks out a bit called the septum, so I'm gonna keep that a little bit lighter but still fairly dark. So let's go ahead and darken this whole area. And initially we made just a kind of a straight line for this triangular shape, but in reality the bone is fairly uneven, so let's just make that a little bit more uneven. Same with this side here, and then continue to make this darker. This will be pretty much solid black or a dark shade, dark tone. Still trying to make it fairly even though. And again, I'm keeping this middle section just a little bit lighter, but you can tell that there's something going on there. Okay, so now that I've made this a little bit darker, I can see that this part needs to be just a little bit darker as well. So I'm just gonna go back here again. You can always just go back as you progress through your drawing. Make certain areas darker, and it'll just help to make the drawing pop out a little bit better. Give it more contrast. Okay, so the skull is formed by many different kinds of bones, and there's always some cracks or where the different bones meet. So let's draw some of those. So there will be like a crack here, and going towards the eye socket here, and every skull is a little bit different, so I'm just adding some of these randomly. Same with here. There'll be, if you look at different skulls, real skulls, they're all just a little bit different. Alright, so I'm gonna smooth this out a little bit more here, add a little more crosshatch, and now we can try to make this even more three-dimensional. Let's start over here. So as I said, this bone is separate from this right here. It actually sticks out further, so this area here will be a little bit further back, so I'm gonna just draw this a little bit darker and a little shadow here just to show that this part is more forward. And because this is rounded, I'm gonna darken the edges some. Darkest at the edge, and then getting lighter as you get closer to the middle. So you can see here as I go further from the edge, my lines are becoming farther apart. And I want to make sure that this part's a little bit darker just to show again that this is behind this bone. And I'll do the same here. So I'm going to put this section of the head more in shadow. Okay, so this part of the skull where the forehead is isn't perfectly flat the way it's showing right now. So I'm going to add more shadow, like this part here, the upper part of the orbit. isn't perfectly flat. So I'm going to add some shadow right here, just to show that this rim kind of sticks out a bit. So a little bit of cross hatching right across here. And I'm just going to go across all the way to the other side and start curving up a little bit. And more over here. And again, I'll just use my finger. So now, again, we're looking at the rim of this bone, and I want this edge, again, just like here, to be brighter to show that there's some thickness to it. So I'm going to add some shadow right here. Not too much. Just like that. And make this part a little bit more three-dimensional, give it more shape by adding some shadow down here at the bottom. Feel free to experiment. Just make sure that it makes some sense. So let's just pretend that the light's coming from the left or even up above. So any of the protruding areas of the bone will be lighter. Those that are more further behind will be darker. So again, here, this bone will be darker here at the bottom. So we'll add more pencil lines down here. And again, this rim of this bone will be further forward. Will catch some of the light, but below it will be a little bit darker. So I'll make this a little bit darker. Right here, a little bit darker. Okay, and again right here, all of this is very irregular, so I'll just add some shadow lines in different areas here. As you know, some people have flatter noses, which means this part, the bridge, won't protrude as far, so the shadows are going to be different for those kind of skulls. So my shading here almost looks random, but there's a general sense of trying to make it more three-dimensional instead of it looking so flat. And again, here this bone will stick out a bit, so I'm gonna add a little shadow here at the bottom, and I'm gonna add more right there. Okay, just to separate the teeth from the maxilla, or the bone that's holding the teeth, I'm just gonna add some shadow, some shading above the teeth here, and we'll keep the teeth more or less white for this drawing. Okay, I want this part to recede a little bit, so I'm gonna make this part a little bit darker. Okay, now let's work on the mandible. And looking at this, I think I may have drawn this a little bit too far out, so I'm gonna just erase this briefly. I want this skull to be a little bit more upright, so I'm gonna just draw this line a little bit further in and draw this mandible in a little bit, and I think that looks a little bit more realistic. So now this mandible, as I said, the joint is back here somewhere. So this is further back than this bone. So I'm gonna make this part significantly darker because this is way in the shadows. Just the upper part. And then darker again on the sides just to give it more shape. And again, we'll have a cast shadow back here. And let's try to make this a little bit more three-dimensional. Again, the edges are going to be a little bit darker. And again, this will be fairly irregular. So we'll make this a little bit more irregular here. And again, we'll shade in the edges here to give it more volume. Darkest at the edge and getting lighter towards as you get to the middle. Just the edges gets dark. And then we'll continue this shading down here just to make this mandible not look so flat. Again, bones are very uneven, not smooth at all, very irregular. So I'm just going to add some extra shading all over here. And I'm just using very random lines. And I'm gonna just make this whole section here a little bit darker. Same with here. Okay. Alright, so now I'm gonna go ahead and add some more of the fissures or the cracked lines where the bones meet inside the orbit. So I'll just go ahead and add some fine lines right here. And some of these lines are really quite jagged, just like that. And some here, here, and there's actually a line right here, kind of goes inside, and this is different for different people, and it can also be different from the one eye to the other eye. So we already put some cracks right here by the bridge. Extend that a bit. Now, one thing with skulls as well is there are holes because nerves have to go from the brain to the outside. So there's actually a hole here. So I'll just make this section a little bit darker. Just a little dot. Not perfectly round, mind you, because it's never perfectly round. Then another one here. And these are where nerves come out. And there'll be a couple down here as well. Alright, now that I've done that, I'll go ahead and make certain areas a little bit darker, just to make it pop out a little bit more. All right, so there's the skull from a front view. I hope you found this video useful, and just remember that every skull is a little bit different, so don't worry about the exact proportions. Just try to practice with putting in shadows so that it looks more three-dimensional. And just go slow. You can always go back and make certain areas a little bit darker. And definitely try to use a reference photo of skulls first before you start trying to draw one, and you'll be more accurate. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Have a great day.